And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, that's too bad." She goes, "Because I could teach you to vibrate faster." And I'm looking at her like, "What?"
What?
She's like, "Yeah." She goes,
You're like, "I'm married. That's inappropriate."
Right, so I'm thinking close to that.
I believe that each and every one of us has the power within ourselves to create the life that we really want. And I want to help give you the tools to make that happen. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense. On the show today is David Meltzer. He is former CEO of Leigh Steinberg Sports and now current CEO of Sports One Marketing, which he founded with Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon. He's a gigantic public speaker and a humanitarian. He's a truly wonderful human being. I met him a couple of years ago when I shot an episode of Elevator Pitch, and we just totally connected. I actually did his podcast that day because he has his own, and we were sitting there going on and on and on, like diving in, realizing how much we had in common and how our beliefs were so in line with each other. We were just like in our own little zone, and we're getting yelled at to hurry up and wrap it up because it had been like 30 minutes, and I kept telling everyone to go away because we were having such a good time. So it was really nice to have 75 minutes to really dive into these topics and things that inspire both of us, and stories of, stories, sad stories of where we came from and what made us who we are today, and then also what inspires us moving forward, and how to craft your life, how to create a foundation that launches you into a life that you truly want, as opposed to just chasing something that is either never going to fulfill you because it's from the ego, or maybe let's just say it's just money, which was his goal. And guess what? If you want to make money, you will, but then what are you going to do after that? So it's about creating foundational, fundamental goals and principles that are going to fuel you for life. So please enjoy this episode. So you grew up in a house with 6 kids. We're laughing, of course, because you said, talk about my family and my growing up and I'll cry. And so we'll start there, no problem. But your mom, single mom, your dad walked out when you were 5.
Yeah.
And one day you saw your mom crying, and it was about money, and you had this epiphany that money was what must buy you happiness.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So how did that shape your life?
What's kind of cool is that most people don't. I had a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 kids, 5 boys and a girl. But my mom was so extraordinary that I was super happy. And so to see her unhappy because of money really triggered me that I have to make my mom happy because I live this extraordinary life. And she was such an educator, worked 2 jobs, literally got home from being a 2nd grade teacher, filled up the turnstiles at 7-Eleven with greeting cards, packed 6 kids into a station wagon, packed our dinner in a brown paper bag, and had the older ones read to the younger ones. And I would literally just tell my siblings, who are all, by the way, parents' wet dreams, Harvard, Penn, Columbia.
Wow.
I literally thought that I was a terrible student because I got a B. They ended up summa cum laude from these schools, but I would tell them, I don't need to do that because I'm just going to be rich. And I knew literally money would buy me happiness, and all I wanted, talk about unconscious manifestation, I just wanted to buy my mom a house and a car. Because most of the time she was sad is because she literally didn't like the places that we lived in, and we never had a nice car. And it would break down, and we never had enough money to fix it. So that's where I think my chip on my shoulder started, was that I didn't feel like I was enough because everyone else, I felt like, looked down on me because they had nice houses and nice cars. And my family all were doctors and lawyers. And my mom had too much pride to ask for help. And I always felt like the underclass citizen wherever I went.
So do you remember it? Do you remember some things early on that you did to try and make money?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Once, you black out things, but when I was 5 years old, I was really fast as a kid.
I don't even remember being 5.
I remember because my dad left, and I remember thinking in my head, I'm going to be the man of the house. At 5, and I.
What is it? So with the 6 of you, what is it?
I'm middle high. So
okay. And girls, boys.
1 boy, one girl, 5 boys.
Okay.
And
still, you want to be the man of the house.
I want to be the man of the house.
Okay.
And my older brothers were, very academic. They liked to play the piano. They like to read and study. So I really felt like I love sports. And I always said I had one gift, and I could run scared really fast. And ironically, the first job I had was there. I literally grew up where LeBron James grew up in Akron, Ohio at this age, and it was not a nice neighborhood. I was the minority in the neighborhood, but I remember people giving me something to run up to the Lawson's, which is a convenience store, and getting $5 for running stuff up there.
Okay, you started hustling young.
Yeah, and I really at 5 or 6, I didn't really know what I was doing. Now I know what I was doing. I probably was a good mule for them. But I really liked money, and even throughout high school, I would do sales type of things.
Really?
I would sell stuff that we had or I could find, and then it's funny because the only 2 real jobs I had in college, I was playing football, but I had no money. So I got a job selling encyclopedias because you could do it at night, one appointment at 6 p.m., one appointment at 8 p.m. And they sold leads to people that just had babies, and you would go in, and because I had an academic family, my story was, hey, you wanna be like my family? They all went to Harvard, Penn, Columbia, but my mom read to me since I was in the womb. So, for $45 a month for 18 years, at 18% interest, you can have.
Son could go to Harvard.
Yeah, pretty much. You have these books come and pretty much the encyclopedia, and you get the free bookshelf. But it was a lot of money, and I was good.
Yeah,
at
they were
selling.
expensive back in the day when we had one growing up.
Yeah, people
A
here,
set.
these young kids are probably like, "What's an encyclopedia?"
Can you imagine now, like trying to do reports without the internet and having to go to an Encyclopedia Britannica and look up things? Like, there's no way. I mean, it'd be interesting to know what fraction of information was actually contained within the encyclopedia set versus what's on the internet.
And what was correct?
Yeah, sure, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's correct on the internet too? That's a good question.
Yeah,
as well.
that's a good question. And progressing to law school, it's funny because all these little things led to me getting that first job that I made millions at.
Yeah.
But in law school, I needed money, so I always have woken up. My mom's parenting philosophy was pretty simple. Number one, I always joke around that she was a black belt of the martial arts. I made actually, what's his name, Damon Wayans, fall out of his chair because I said, because he does martial arts. I go, oh, my mom's a black belt. He goes, really? I go, yeah, 3rd degree black belt in Jewish guilt. And that was really her key to success. But also she woke us all up at 5 o'clock. Her philosophy was
AM.
Yeah, I don't care what you do. Just, you got to wake up at 5 a.m. and you can stay out as late as you want, do whatever you want, knowing that, trust me, you did not make it past 9. So we were really good kids in that respect.
I agree with that philosophy.
It helped
My dad woke us up, like my sister and I, summer break. I mean, obviously with school, you'd have to get up early, but in summer break, he would call the house at 8 a.m., not 5 a.m., but 8 a.m. until we answered. He's like, get up and do something with your day. And to this day, I mean, I wake up excited for the day. I look at my phone to look at what time it is because that's the only clock I need now. And so I look at my phone and I just hope it says something with a 6 on it because I want to get up. I don't want it to say 5 something because I'm like, shoot, I'm kind of awake now. I got to go to sleep. And then there's those other people who, they look at the clock and no matter what, they wish they had another hour or 2. And I don't. I want to get going. And I wonder if there's something too that waking up, that molding of you at such a young age going, get up, do something with your day.
I truly believe there is because I believe there's 2 mindsets. You're a mindset person like myself. And most people don't realize that we only have one action in the day. And so at a very young age, what my mom was programming us to do is to have the mindset of that first action is going to be a positive action, right? And so today I still wake up at 4 a.m. And the reason in law school I got my job was I could sell Roadrunner Sports tennis shoes, incoming sales 4 a.m. to 9 a.m., then go get my law clerk job 9 a.m. And I'd make more money selling shoes than I did law. But I believe that mindset's so important because for now, my life has changed as we'll go through, but I believe that mindset is to find peace. And then that's the one action of the day. The rest of your day is just reaction. So you're really only allowed one action because once you take action, everything else that happens in your life is a reaction. So the 2 mindsets I have is find peace and then get back to peace or get back to center.
How do you find peace in the morning then? What do you do?
It's funny because I used to say that I pray and meditate, right? 20 minutes a day I meditate to find peace. Although today I got a piece of advice that now that I'm over 50, it's PPM.
Oh,
which is
P, pray, meditate.
And since I'm over 50, it actually, I think, is more peaceful to take a pee than to meditate.
Well, you know, the Dalai Lama actually said he likes to eat before he meditates because otherwise he's just distracted by being hungry. And I'm like, I can relate.
That's awesome.
Now, I'm 100% certain I don't meditate as much as the Dalai Lama, but yeah, pray, meditate.
Yeah, and that philosophy and mindset that, you know, I'm a lamp.
Okay.
Right? I'm plugged into the highest source of energy. I try to tell people, and I know you're going to have, another guest is going to talk about that you have more power in one finger. I mean, enough power in this finger to light this house up for a week. And we don't realize the extraordinary kilowatts that we carry. And you know, people are confused. They always are talking about, I got to connect to inspiration. I got to find my purpose. No. You need to clear the interference away from what you're already connected to.
Yeah, find it in here.
Including
It's inside.
here. Like, you and I talked, and there, we when we were doing our TV show together, I felt so connected. There was so much power. And then other times there's interference. And so I really dwell on the two mindsets of I'm going to be at peace and of center and find that power. And when I get off of center in the ego-based consciousness, my goal is just to get back to center before I start any type of movement again.
Well, I've definitely believed that when you wake up in the morning, let's say, you know, you drop your toothbrush or you stub your toe or something, and you're like, oh, it's a horrible day. It's just going to be a bad day. Well, that's exactly what you're going to get. And so for many years, I've thought of it like that, going, now when something like that happens, I just laugh and I'm like, and I'm not going to say it's going to be a bad day because that's exactly what it's going to be then. Another thing that I feel like I've been thinking about more and more is how, again, I said, you know, wake up and look at my phone to see the time. That phone, right? It's just one of those things that can be used in such a great way, but it can also be so distracting and so consuming and create so many negative thoughts. And so I've also been thinking about how when I get up in the morning, while I might look at a text message from someone that I love, I won't look at social media. I'm not going to like lay there and look at my phone. I'm going to wait until I get downstairs, have some water, make my coffee, and then go, okay, and just like start my day with some peace, like you said, because now I'm not disciplined enough to sit there for 20 minutes and meditate at first, but I'm at least getting more disciplined to sort of say, like, I'm going to remove outside influences from my day so that I can just start rolling in the right way. Right?
That's really cool you said rolling in the right way, because I talk about when we're in that ego-based consciousness, people say, well, how do you get back to center? I'm like, your mind, body, and soul are on fire when you're in the ego-based consciousness. That's the need to be right, offended, fearful, and anxious. You're creating all this. So you say roll, I'm always like, my mom taught me if I catch on fire, to stop, drop, and roll.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I have taught myself to stop. I drop down my blood pressure, I get back to center, and then I make sure I just roll in the right direction again.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that
funny.
you said that. And one of the things about waking up at 4, though, which I find unique, because I'm one of the few people that actually does it religiously. I live my today so I can wake up tomorrow at 4, and that's what it takes to wake up at that time. You can't just condition yourself. You have to actually live your life thinking, okay, if I do this, am I going to be able to wake up at 4?
Of course, right?
But the cool thing is, you won't there's no pressure time-wise. When you wake up that early, nobody's expectation is you're going to get back to them. My biggest problem is I finish meditating at 4:20, I have 10 minutes, I go work out. My problem is I'll look at my text like before I get in the car or whatever, and sometimes I'll forget that it's 4, and I'll text somebody, and what if their ringer, you know how it lights up and it wakes them up, and they're like, what the heck is he doing?
So considerate. See here, I'd be on the other side thinking, gosh, they're going to think I'm so ambitious today. Right, when you answer like a little too early.
I don't know, you are ambitious. I'd be like, of course you did that.
I'd like to think so, but okay, so you said you got this amazing job, you made a whole bunch of money, you're a millionaire in your 20s, you're a multimillionaire in your 30s, everything's going great. And then your dad sends you something.
Yeah, my first warning. So, you know, I really...
How old were you? Were you 30?
30 years old. So my
birthday.
dad left, and he was my hero. So this will be when I cry, because I try to make it through the story, but it's hard because my dad was my hero. So imagine this back in the 70s. There really wasn't a thing about child support. Most dads were deadbeat dads, no matter how much money they made. So here's my father, good looking, rich, leaves my mom with these kids, and he goes and finds a new wife that's closer to my age than his, driving his convertible Cadillac. In fact, one time he drove by, he was supposed to take me out and waved, literally with this beautiful blonde lady in the car. But he was my hero. Like, and I actually said to my mom, why can't you be more like Dad? You're such a loser. And she was working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And she would never say one thing negative about him, right? Which today still, like, I try to aspire to be to that potential of unconditional judgment where she could be that peaceful to do that. But when I was 10 years old, my dad forgot my birthday. And I was crushed, and I started to cry, and I'm like, how could he forget my birthday? Because I literally felt as if I was my dad's favorite. I was the most like him, right? I was a bullshitter, manipulator, overseller, back-end seller. I was just like him, and I called him up, and this is where he made his biggest mistake. I said, how could you forget my birthday? And he said, I didn't forget your birthday. I don't believe in birthdays. And I was smart enough at 10 to realize that my dad just bullshitted me, right? He didn't care about me, and it crushed me. I would have rather him say, hey, I was busy, I really love you, I made a mistake. But now that I'm a father, I know why he lied, because he was so hurt and shameful. But I literally turned the knob, and also my mom turned on my father. It was the first time she ever said anything negative about him, and she probably shouldn't have, but she knew how crushed I was. So I lived.
And she was protecting you at that point.
Of course, and I was crushed, and I literally went to hate, and I separated myself from him. I would tell him I don't want to be anything like him. He moved to Houston, I didn't want to visit him. They forced me to go visit him. And I always made up stories about my father to my friends. Like, I made up these stories about a father I didn't have, because I moved to San Diego. And so nobody ever knew my father. So I made up these like great stories about my father. And when I was 30 years old, my dad never ever said he was proud of me, even to the day he died.
That's tough. That's rough.
Never. And at 30, he gave me this big box, and it was a birthday present. And I thought, wow, my dad gets it. He's
finally turning the corner.
Yeah. And so I get this wonderful blazer, and it fits me perfectly, which meant more than anything. Because at that time I could afford what I wanted, but it fit me, which meant he asked my wife my sizes, had it custom made, because I don't have, the perfect off the rack body. And I opened it up, and he tore all the lining out and the pockets out. And I was like, this guy is sick, right? Like, literally, he sent this as some sort of sadistic joke of teaching me something. And so I called him up, and I'm like, Dad, I got your birthday present. I'm like, but I can't wear it. He goes, it's not for wearing. I'm like, what is it for? He goes, it's for hanging in your closet. I'm like, why? To remind you of me. And I'm like, what, that you're an asshole? Literally. And he goes, no, you're just like me. And I literally got upset. I'm like, I'm nothing like you. I'm a father, right? I have 3 daughters. I've worked my butt off. I've made everything myself. I was, right? And I was so angry, and I'm like, I'm nothing like you. He said, you're just like me, and I want this to remind you of me so you don't end up like me. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I don't want you to be the richest man in the cemetery. I want that to remind you can't take anything with you when you're gone. And that to me was the first warning sign that I was just like my father. The reason I hated my father was just like my father. Everything I hated about my father was what I hated about myself.
Well, because when there's anger associated, there's something deeper.
Yeah, exactly. And that shift, a couple other things occurred to put me, into the right direction, which is funny because I had everything I ever wanted. My best friend, we went golfing. I asked him, how come you don't hang out with me? He said, because I don't like who you hang out with. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing what those guys are doing. You can hang out with me. And he literally said, which shook me, he said, you can lie to me, but don't lie to yourself. And I stayed up the whole night after he said that to me because I knew it was true.
It's powerful, right?
I was partying. I was going places that I shouldn't go. And it was funny. I would go places that you shouldn't go, and then the whole time regret being there. Like in my head, and I did it habitually. Like I would, in the middle of the day.
You're like self-sabotaging yourself.
Yeah, and like literally go like, why am I here? This is not me. And then finally I had gotten a job at Leigh Steinberg. I went through a transition in technology from, we sold our first company for $3.4 billion to Thomson Reuters, which set me into a trajectory into the Silicon Valley, which ended up being a CEO of the world's first smartphone. I mean, I was Midas, in my own mind, Midas. Like, I controlled, and I was super happy. In my mind, like, even buying my mom a house and a car, I'm like, oh, bought me happiness. I'm my mom's favorite kid. Like, everything was money-oriented.
So you ended up doing that?
Oh, yeah.
How did that feel when it actually happened?
Amazing. And it just cemented the fact that money bought happiness. I was convinced that it bought happiness. And money was so important to me. I used to talk only about money. My whole valuation was about money. I didn't even realize how lost I was in my own ego to prove something to somebody about how rich I could be. And the last warning was I had gotten this tremendous job with Leigh Steinberg because of money. Jeff Morad had bought into the Diamondbacks, had left him. He was looking for a successful, because he didn't care about money.
I've met him before, I think. Small world, yeah.
And I literally was the new Jeff Morad to Leigh. And I came home, I was with Little John the Rapper at the Grammy Awards. I had lied to my wife about going. And I came home at 5 in the morning in an altered state of mind. And she's built just like you, same size. And I see that tiny silhouette with the 4-car garage and the glass doors. And I'm like, oh shit. Literally, my friend even asked, you sure you don't want to spend the night? I'm like, she sees us, dude. I'm so drunk,
I can't leave now.
I'm drunk. I'm like, she sees us. Anyway, like a 5-year-old, I walk up there and she literally asked me, she goes, or told me, she goes, you are not a rock star. And I looked at her and I go, I may not be, but I sure feel like one.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, this is what I was told because she did not want to see me. I came down in the morning completely hungover and to a crying wife who is the most extraordinary person, best friend, enlightened, spiritual, told me, like, she's just awesome. And I've known her since the 4th grade. I adored her. And she literally said, I'm not happy. You better take stock in who you were and what you want to become, or you're going to become very lonely. And
wow.
I'm one of the few people, I literally was scared straight. I went back and outlined these certain things, a way to live my life that set me on a different trajectory. And the hard part for me to explain to people is it took 2 years of a quantum shift in my life, a transformation. While I was learning and growing, I went bankrupt 2 years after I went through my quantum shift.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because
it's really weird to
you've
explain.
obviously set the wheels in motion in a whole nother direction for the long term versus the short term, but it resulted in losing everything.
Yeah, I created causes, and I really believe that life is about lessons, and the lessons are going to keep on coming until we learn them, and the way we know.
I agree completely.
Literally, and
sometimes you have to go completely broke.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to get to that point, but
sometimes there's bottoming out's the best thing that you can do. And
so how'd that happen?
You know what happened is and that's why I wrote my latest book, right? Game Time Decision Making. I made bad decisions based upon assumptions. I surrounded myself with the wrong people and the wrong ideas, but what happened was my ego, I got into a lawsuit with a neighbor that I bought a condo conversion from, and I spent millions of dollars of cash proving I was right.
Oh, wow.
Right, as a lawyer, that's really dumb. But the interesting thing, my
wife...
wife...
The lawyer's really happy. He made a ton of money.
Oh, they all did.
You lost a lot.
But I always was...
The lawyers get paid no matter what.
Exactly, right? And remember that if you're going to get divorced, too. Yeah. Right? Which I have not, or no, will I do? But divorce lawyers especially. What was interesting for me, though, is that I literally always felt like I had at least $40 to $50 million I could fall back on. Because I owned 33 properties. I had a ski mountain, a golf course with tons of equity. But because I was so arrogant, I never asked for help. Right, and it's a lesson that I've learned. But I went to my private bank, and I said, "Hey, I need another $5 million." And they said, "Hey, great. Where are you going to get it?" I said, "Oh, I'm just going to refinance this property. I'll take a line." No, you won't. I'm like, well, what do you mean I won't? I got like $40 million or $50 million in equity. You're not going to give me $5 million. I've been a good customer of the bank. They're like, well, we're kind of going under ourselves. We'd rather hold your property than extend credit to anyone else. We're just not extending credit on property anymore. We're really not sure about the valuations. It's too high of a risk for us at this time. Go somewhere else. That's when the lessons started coming, right? Because I still had cash needs and things were moving quickly. Word gets out, you're looking for money, and the properties can't be evaluated fast enough because they're having problems because everyone's moving. And before, you needed a pulse to get a loan. Now it was like stated income. Nah, we can't really look at stated income, right? Well, your salary's not that high at Leigh Steinberg's. Yeah, well, I didn't need a high salary, right? This was a different, and I have equity, I have this. And so then you start selling things, and they're not selling fast enough, and you still have bills. Well, then all of a sudden you miss one payment.
Yeah.
Then try to get a loan.
Okay.
So things I had over $100 million in value, right, on paper.
Wow.
Over $100 million that I lost. And I remember the greatest peace in my life was the day that I literally went bankrupt, but not because of the cleansing of bankrupt. I actually didn't owe anybody any money because I had so much equity. It all just worked itself out. But the hardest thing was when I went bankrupt, I had gotten my job based off of me being a successful business person, of being wealthy and being able to raise money and make money. And worse, Leigh Steinberg especially, at that time we did an article in Sports Illustrated, he created legacies for athletes. 75% of all football players, for example, went bankrupt 2.5 years after playing, and here his CEO is bankrupt. How's that gonna look, right?
Yeah.
So I was terrified telling him, I thought I was gonna lose my job. And no, Warren Moon, who's now my business partner, but they both were really supportive. But here's the worst thing, and here's where I found my peace. As I was driving home, I realized I had to tell my mom. And my mom was that person who always was doctor, lawyer, failure, don't take big risks, study hard, work hard, get a normal job like my siblings did.
She said the internet wasn't going to work out too, right?
Yeah, right. I had that job offer that made me money. But imagine going to tell your mom, who you think loves you because you bought her a house and a car, who you think loves you because of your financial success. That was the only thing that distinguished me from these extraordinary siblings, which really has an energy
It's going to the 5-year-old story of like money equals happiness.
Yeah, imagine having to tell her that you went bankrupt, but moreover, I realized I didn't take her house out of my name. So I lost her house.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So I'm crying
Holy
the
crap.
whole way over to her house.
Oh my God.
And I'm in my mind, if anyone ever saw Red Fox when it used to be like Elizabeth, like remember my mom's drive was Jewish guilt. I thought,
What does Jewish guilt look like? I don't know.
like yeah, that's right. Well, it's guilt in general, right? It was like, how could, like, I'll give you an example of a parenting Jewish guilt.
Okay.
I got into a fight with my younger brother and we're pounding each other on the floor and my mom would sit there crying saying, you're hurting me more than you're hurting each other. Please stop. I've done everything for you. Right? That's Jewish guilt in a classic way. Or just telling you, you know, doctor.
Is
lawyer,
this just
right?
any guilt?
Yeah,
like just like any guilt,
But
or
we
is this
perfected
specific
it, I
to
think.
Jewish?
I think
Okay.
Jewish guilt, you know, like maybe the
Bigger, stronger.
Catholics invented it and Jews perfected it one way or another. But it's there and it's
Yeah.
real. But I literally thought, like it was going to break my heart and hers.
Yeah.
And so I went up, told her that I had lost everything, and including her house, and she would have to move. And without blinking, without crying, without any guilt, she looked at me and asked me if I was okay, if she could help me, give me any money. I was like, how could she be? It was like the mom that I sat there telling, you know, you're such a loser. There was the person that like set forth that trajectory for my life. And I looked at her and I was already on the spiritual path. And I said, that's what the truth looks like, right? And I wanted to now enjoy that pursuit of the truth, my potential. I wanted to be like my mom, but I was given different gifts than my mom. My mom's a catalyst. I'm actually a producer. And I wanted to change lives through making money. And at that moment, I realized one thing, that money was super important, not to my mom, but to me, not because it bought happiness, because it allowed me to shop. And what if I changed everything in my life and started shopping for the right things? And this is where the paradigm is really cool, is that I'm different than most spiritual people. I'm a money-oriented, pragmatic spiritual person. Think and Grow Rich is one of my favorite books.
I think that's important for people to hear, though, because money is not evil.
No.
It's why you're doing it or what you're doing with it, perhaps. But money's not evil.
No, it's an
It can be
energy.
wonderful.
Yeah,
it's
money-
an energy, right?
It's an energy, it's an object of energy
So
that you
please
put
help
in the
people
flow.
understand how they can have a positive association with money instead of thinking that it's, you know, like they try and tell you, the root of all evil. No, it's not.
It's an energy.
They ask for, if it's the root of all evil, why do they come around with a plate asking you to put money in it? Okay? So
point.
let's clear this up.
Because you're shopping for the right things. And so for me, money was an object that I could put into the flow. It's truly the pragmatic example of how we manifest. I've actually, to help people understand manifestation, because that was a woo-woo term that I like, people that manifest stuff are high, broke, sick on their mom's couch, lazy, right? Like,
That was how we thought of it before.
Yeah, and so like I'm like, money's a manifestation. Like if I have a green card, I can manifest so much. If I have a platinum card, I can manifest so much on Amazon. If I have a black card, I can manifest everything. Well, I was gonna take that philosophy, the energy that you put into the flow, and I was gonna shop for the right things. So like my 50th birthday, I decided I'd shop for 2 community centers in Africa and see what that provided, which was happiness. But then I realized there was a greater currency in the universe than money. At a pragmatic level, money is important. Faith. Now, faith always scared me because I wasn't religious.
Okay.
And I love people who have faith because you are someone who I use an example that have extreme faith. Why? Because it's someone that can think, say, do, and believe something and affects their unconscious competency. Your personality traits, your characteristics, your obsessions and addictions created a frequency at such a high level that you were able to exceed what anyone even believed. Right? And I see it all the time. I've been blessed to be a sports agent and to be in media. I see people that have continually enjoyed the consistent, persistent pursuit of your potential. When I was with you, one of the most interesting things is I'm like, oh, you must love to race. And you're like, no. You learned to do it. And people tell me all the time, you're so lucky. Every job you loved, every job you had. I said, who would love selling legal research? Right? Like, honestly,
Right.
I learned to love everything.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. I learned to love what I do because I enjoy the pursuit of my potential.
It's a byproduct. Like, these are just like byproducts of getting to an end goal. Really, they're just like a part of the path. You know.
Absolutely. And money is a catalyst for allowing you to enjoy the pursuit of your potential at even a greater level. You just have to shop for the right things. But with faith, it's even cooler because if we think, say, do, and believe every day, consistently and persistently,
Yeah.
the universe is a bigger Amazon, right? I call it the field of intention. It's
Yeah.
a big, and I want to hold a
Bigger
black card
Amazon.
of faith.
I love that.
It
That's
is.
great. It's
I want
the
a black
biggest
card of
Amazon
faith.
ever.
Imagine having a black card of faith where you think, say, and do things at a statistical pace that everything you think, say, and do and believe comes to you, right? Your ideas will clothe itself. I don't understand why people think that if I plant a corn seed in the ground, we're never surprised when corn comes out. But when I plant a seed, an imagination in my brain,
Right.
why am I surprised with what you put faith in
Right.
comes out?
Right.
When I think about what I want, here's what happens. If
Especially
you
if
don't
you-
think about and put faith in what you want, you're going to be a copy. Right? Because what other people, and we put faith in what other people want for us, then we resent when we get it. But everybody else, when you ask them what you should have or do, all they're going to do is copy. Right? They're not going to have any original thought for you. So you're going to end up a copy if you put faith in what everybody else wants for you. It takes Danica Patrick to put faith in something completely different, and everyone says, no, that's impossible. If Jeff Bezos 25 years ago, I was sitting in his garage, told me he'd be worth $100 billion because he's starting an online bookstore, I'm an imaginative guy, but if he put faith in what I believed, he would not have $100 billion.
Yeah.
Right?
Believing is 100% the most powerful. That was, to me, my career. Like, there's no reason why I should have become a race car driver. I didn't have the name, I didn't have the money, I had no job when I was 20, 21 years old when I should have. Like, that was a pivotal part of my career. But all I did was I had tons of blind faith. That's what I always called it, even when I was younger. I just knew it was going to work out. I just totally believed it was going to work out. It is literally the most powerful force, I believe.
There's 3 laws that people get confused, and once again, you're a perfect poster child for it. First, there's the law of Goya, which John Assaraf talks about. 1, hard work,
Okay.
right? You are a hard worker.
Yeah.
Smart work, you're a smart worker. And then long work, which is something that Gary Vaynerchuk and I talk about, is we're long workers, meaning we have a long perspective. We don't attach, when you're 21, everyone's saying you're crazy. I'm looking way out here. I'm a long worker. Then you have the law of attraction, which is the belief, right? I'm going to plant the seeds, get what I want. But the thing that most people don't understand, and you are a poster child for this, it's the law of surrender. Where the most successful people are, not only do they live by the law of Goya and attraction, the law of surrender states this, that I have enough faith that I'm going to surrender to get out of my own way, surrender to my ego, surrender to all those people that make me insecure, fearful, everything, all those words. The people that live in the law of surrender are not listening to those voices either outside their brain or inside their brain that says, you can't do it. No one's done it before. You're going to lose everything. No one's going to like you. One of my favorite Gary Vee stories when I was with him last Friday was, I went to the 8th grade and I started trying to sell baseball cards to girls, and my friends were like, you blew it, dude. Your whole rap is over for high school. You did it in your first day of the 8th grade. He goes, I was a long thinker, and I surrendered and put faith in what I wanted. And that's how he was successful.
You know, there was Aubrey Marcus said it really well when I was explaining this. I listened to a lot of Abraham Hicks. I'm not sure if you do or not, but this sort of how when you want something enough, you also create resistance. And so he explained it really well, and that when you want something so badly, and you have desperation, which that's not surrendering.
Right.
Then on the other side of it, because there's always the balance of it, the polarity of the other side, it means that you're so frightened that you won't get it. So that has energy too. The fear of not being able to do what you need to do, make the money you want to make, be who you want to be. So the surrender comes to release all of those conflicting energies and let what is already in motion just flow.
Absolutely. And fear, we had talked about earlier, it's so interesting being around athletes that will tell you, well, fear motivates me. I'm going to tell you this mathematically, and Aubrey will agree. Fear is the most depreciating thing you can do. It'll suck your soul of all your energy. Where people get confused about fear is fear focuses us. And let me explain with the best example. I've seen an old lady, a grandmother, lift a car to save a baby out of fear. Out of fear. Not out of inspiration, out of fear. What she did was got so hyper-focused that her body biochemically created a reaction that created ultimate strength for her. What you don't see that happens to people is after she lifted that car, she had torn ligaments and muscles and was sore. Her back was out. There's all these physical manifestations of what happened because it depreciated all her energy, right? There's no sustainability to fear other than depreciation of all your energy. So what do we have to do in order to be happy is we have to find a substitute for fear, to be focused, right? How do we get clear, balanced, and focused? Through consistent behavior. Why you are a great athlete is you are consistent every day, persistent in the pursuit of your potential as a racer, as a driver, but literally in my life, people ask you, what's the closest to your potential? Ironically, the closest I came to my potential was because when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a professional football player. Every day of my life, I was focused in on that. I had a knowing about me that I could play football. Even though every team I ever joined, I was the last one picked. They always were third on the chart. Even when I started in college, when I came back for the next year, I was third on the chart. There was always some freshman that was going to come in that was twice my side, whatever.
Yeah.
And, literally, even though I was an average Division III football player, that's the closest to my potential I've come according to my talents.
Yeah.
That has helped me more than anything because I've been given gifts that I wasn't utilizing. And so now that I can speak and process and write and all these things that I'm really good at, and now I'm applying, I wish I would apply when I was 5, like you did in driving. But even though I started applying some of them at 25, 35, and 45, there's no rush to it. I told Bob Proctor, Napoleon Hill, who's one of my favorite authors, Carnegie sat down and said, if you're going to work for me and travel the world and learn the lessons and be more impactful than I can, you need to read this every day for 30 straight days. And it said, I, Napoleon Hill, will challenge Andrew Carnegie at the post and beat him at the finish line. And he didn't believe it at all. And so for me, I look at my mentors, and I went up to Bob Proctor, who's one of my thought leader mentors, and I said, as we were speaking on the same stage, I said, hey, Bob, I'm going to challenge you at the post and ask you at the finish line.
He probably loved that.
Yeah, he did. He goes, you may have already done it. I said, no, you're 35 years older than me, and literally what you've accomplished. And my goal is to literally impact 1 billion people to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about that. I mean, obviously, you went through that huge transition in your life, the sort of the quantum shift, the frequency shift. And what became, what did you identify as your reset button? This is how I'm going to identify with the world according to me, but in business.
What I identified was 3 worlds that I had lived in. The first was a world of not enough. So when I grew up, I was in a scarce mode. There was never enough, and I was a victim. I was born poor, born with a single, into this divorced family with a lot of problems, and I was just a victim. And then when I proved I could make it, I felt like I lived in a world of just enough, and there was just enough for me. I thought it was a very positive world, that there's always enough just for me, and just enough. But I wanted more. There's always more money, more things to buy.
More for you?
Yeah, more for me. Yeah. And then, as I went through the quantum shift, I realized I had no motivation or worth for me. When I built my huge home in Rancho Santa Fe, I remember lying in bed going, oh shoot, what am I going to do now? It was the first time I wasn't happy. Yeah.
Right. There's a whole bunch of that because, the ego is never full, ever. The ego is always hungry.
Yeah.
No matter what you accomplish, it's when it's ego-based, it's
Yeah.
It's never full.
Yeah, one Super Bowl is not enough.
No.
Yeah, although before the Super
The
Bowl,
mansion's
I'll
not
tell
enough.
you one's enough.
Yeah.
Nothing's enough.
No.
And then I realized there's this world of more than enough. What if I lived in true appreciation? And I don't just mean being thankful for everything that came to me, but what if I added value to it and gave it away? How motivated and inspired would I be if I could allow myself to expand and accelerate to the point where I could handle or have the capacity to attract more than anyone else and allow it to come through me, add value to it, and give it away? I called it the 120 rule. I was going to live my life where I was going to be able to give $100 to everyone that I met and only ask for 20 back. I believe there has to be a flow. It wasn't just about giving, it was creating this flow. And I would do it emotionally. I would lie in bed and dream that my whole room was full of hundreds and I was gonna hand out. I wanted to know what it felt like. So I'd dream all day, like anyone I meet, what their faces would look like.
As you well know, Joe, who I'm going to talk to after you, Joe Dispenza, how there's no difference in your brain between something that actually happened and something that you've just imagined. So you've literally created those experiences for yourself.
And the energetic
Yeah.
nuance. In fact, I actually, in my first book, talk about cancel, clearing, and connecting because people have so much problems letting things go. So I'm like, well, cancel negative thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if it comes back? I'm like, that means it's in the subconscious, so just tell yourself clear.
Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, I've had these horrible things happen to me and I just can't let it go. And so I actually teach them to shift their energy by viewing what bothers them the most, finding a light in it, which is a really important progress.
Yeah, yeah,
If you can
keep
find
going.
light in people that you hate, right? In other words, pray for their happiness. So the guy who I felt was the cause of me losing everything, the lawsuit, the one who took and was very abusive and attacking.
Sure, you held animosity for a long time.
9 years. And my wife still does, actually. She's so honest. But I started picturing him in my mind and picking out the things that I knew he really was that was good. Like, he's a really good dad. Right, he was he was a really good dad, and I take that light and I cover him, and then I look over here at my family that I love the most, and I take that light between what I hated the most and what I love the most, and then I put it over myself, and I actually felt an energy shift, and it took me 9 years to condition that. In fact, I'm practicing right now intuition, the same way that I practice shifting my energy, because I think intuition is so interfered with that we have great intuition.
What do you mean?
So like, oh, somebody's calling. I'm about to call you. Or I knew you were going to say that. Or I knew that was going to be 31 black. Okay.
Right? So you like pushing for the manifestation of the intuition.
Yeah.
A little extra. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And so Bob Proctor, one of my mentors, because he is an intuit, he can tell things about people. And I said, well, how do you practice that?
Yeah.
And he's like, Dave, and I've been starting to do it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
He said, go into a room and start staring at someone's back that's not facing you and watch how long it takes them to turn around and feel you. And then when they turn around, go, hey. He said, and then when you get really good at it, when you're sitting on a plane, stare at the crack between the seats and watch all of a sudden they start moving and literally turn around and look through the crack. That's how you build that muscle of intuition.
Wow.
Allow people to feel you, to work that muscle of not only allowing others to feel you, but you'll start feeling. So,
of course, the question is like on a sports level or, just anything that you're doing at a very, very high elite level with not a lot of time to think, how much of that really is already happening into it anyway? Is there already the intuition? You don't know it. You're just a good player, but you actually have a highly tuned intuition.
There's a third.
Or for me on the track, like, I told crew chiefs and engineers all the time, like, I'm telling you, it's loose. Like, if you want me to spin out to prove it to you, I will, but I promise it is. And so, like, how much of that was just intuitive based versus, like, you know what I mean?
Actual pragmatic analysis.
Yeah.
I like to study film of running backs, especially because I'm so curious about intuition in the third eye.
Yeah.
They call it the third eye to confuse you and make it seem woo-woo, but it's just intuition.
Right.
Or you have 5 senses that are very disturbed, meaning you do not see, smell, taste, touch correctly. We all, I learned this in criminal law when I went to law school. It was really fascinating. My professor, the first day of law school, all of a sudden this guy ran in and it said, "You gave me an F," and attacked him, hit him, and he ran out of the room. And then the professor got up laughing, and he said, "Okay."
He got up laughing? What a great professor.
It was staged. It was staged.
Oh.
And so he got up laughing, and he said, "Okay, now everyone, I want you to write down how tall he was, if it was a man or a woman, what color he was, what they were wearing, what color the shirt, all these different things." And it was amazing. These are highly intelligent law students. It was amazing how off everyone was.
Oh, yeah.
Which tells us our perception
Oh, yeah. Had
is
nothing
so
to do-
far off.
Yeah.
But our intuition can be exact.
Yeah, so I read this great book called Frequency, and one of the sort of exercises it gave that I thought was wonderful was identify with something that you have a judgment or a problem, and imagine the worst possible outcome. Imagine the worst case scenario, worst thoughts, worst outcome, and feel how that feels. Then shift to imagining the best possible outcome and the best possible feeling you could have, and feel that. And now pick which one you want to live with. Pick which energy you want to like infiltrate and then extend beyond your body, right? So I feel like what you're saying when you look at somebody and get them to turn around, you're literally sending the energetic signals, the frequency of like, I want to engage with you. Hello, I'm friendly. Look at me. Say hello. Because if you were standing behind somebody and you just thought, you're horrible, I hate you, I wish you'd die, and you thought all those things, I can promise that person would probably walk away as opposed to turn around and say something to you. So it's important to understand that our thoughts, our energy is felt, right? I think Joe Dispenza also says that no, it's Bruce Lipton. I love when he says, the gazelle does not have to check with the lion whether or not it wants to eat it. It knows.
Absolutely. And I love going to Africa for that reason, because there is a different sense.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'll walk a neighborhood and there'll be a loose dog and I'll be afraid. But I've walked in the Masai Mara with, wild animals with no fear. There's an intuition, right? They don't, and then, of course, the guides will tell you they can't even eat you, so they're not interested in you, right? You're way too big, or they don't even eat meat, so there's no need for you. There's just completely spiritual or energetic or frequency that creates this environment. And that's why I love going to Africa, because you learn so much about human nature.
A little more
and
primal.
Very much so. And how do we truly inspire people when we know how they feel?
Frequency, I find, I actually believe that God is a frequency.
Oh, for sure.
So when that's one of my first questions that really set me on this more science-based spirituality sort of quest was, I was like, what is God? Not who, but like, give me some kind of explanation. Like, it's not a dude on a cloud in the sky with a throne and a long white beard. Like, it's not a singular person. That's not even fair to God. That's way too limiting.
Right.
He's just a man. That poor him. But no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. but I think of God as a frequency for me. So, one question that I have is what do you do? Because no doubt, like, life comes at you. There are challenges. There are things that are going to make you doubt yourself or feel guilty or mad. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen. But how do you raise your frequency?
Yeah, so for me, there's 3 parts of frequency. One's the force of the signal, the strength of your signal, the bandwidth of your spectrum for frequency. So, for example, God has the strongest signal and the widest spectrums, right? He can handle so many different channels, and then he has the greatest clarity. So for me, those 3 things are very important. And I'll give you a real life example how frequency works in that respect. I wake up at 4, I meditate immediately, then I take about 10 minutes to get to the gym. Saturday morning, 4:30, I'm walking out to my car and notice that my 17-year-old daughter's car is not there. My frequency is off, right? I'm based in a fear-based emotion, and I pick up my phone and I'm about to go scream at her. Yeah. Right, that's where it's at. And then I stop, drop, and roll. I get back to center and I elevate my frequency. Right, I elevate. So by literally going back to center, so I'm going back to the place by breathing, by being aware of why. So I ask myself, why am I angry, right? That's the feeling of ego that I have. Why am I angry? Why am I so mad at her? Because I'm afraid that one of the most important people to me is hurt. And I also have a responsibility. So I have my ego in the way that I've let everyone down because my 17-year-old's car is gone and something's maybe happened.
Break it down to the emotion.
Right.
Instead of being angry about something, go, it's because I feel like because I don't trust, or because I've been hurt, or because, whatever it may be. Like, break it down to the energy
and
that
you
you're
can only be
feeling.
aware of vibration or
emotion.
frequency that is equal to or less than you.
Exactly.
So if I can elevate my frequency back up here through going back to center, now I say to myself, okay, my actual physiology is down, so I'm going to pick up the phone again. Now I call and I tell my daughter, this is one of the best examples of my highest frequency time. I call her and I said, hey, where are you? I'm in my room. Where? At our house. Where's your car? It's at the grocery store. Why? Kids were drinking, Dad. You told me if people are drinking that not to have them in the car, so I just Ubered home, like you told me. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry for waking you. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too, Daddy.
Oh
now,
my God, what a fantastic story.
It's frequency. But here's the difference. I could have ruined my whole relationship, and what even worse than ruining my relationship and creating all types of baggage between and frequency interference between the two of us. Worse, next time that happens, what are kids going to do because they don't want to be yelled at and swore at and feel terrible? They're going to get in the car with people that are drinking. And then something even, right? It's a whole lower level of vibration.
Right.
And this is a classic example of frequency where we cause so much problem with ourselves because we don't stop, drop, and roll. We don't roll in that right trajectory. We don't understand vibration. We don't understand frequency and awareness. And now here's the cool thing about lessons. They're going to keep on coming to you, learn them, but I know one thing about them. You're going to forget every lesson that you've ever learned at one time or another.
Yeah.
Which means that no matter how enlightened I sound, sound on here, you know that there's still times that I sit there and go, why would my wife still be married to me that I just said that, right?
Yeah.
The lowest, or what terrible dad am I? But I'm human.
Sure.
But the coolest thing about lessons to me is you may forget every lesson you've ever learned, but you have the power to remember them all. And I just want to remember them more and more and more. That's a true potential that I have is, what if I could remember to hold doors open and to pick up trash and to put the cart back where it's supposed to go and to smile at people and to not live in, what if I remembered that more and more? Because all the lessons, we already know them. And the cool thing about frequency is I can stand on a stage now, resonate so much that I can tell 7,000 franchisees, change your life by being grateful, say thank you before you go to bed and thank you when you wake up. And it has a frequency, a power now, a signal, and a spectrum and a clarity that they'll stand in line for an hour to an hour and a half to tell me I changed their life, that they're now going to say thank you. You cannot tell me that they didn't know that already. It's a frequency.
Tell me some of the things that you, no matter how silly, because I have my own silly, tell me some of the things that you have found that you can observe being grateful for that you would have never, like, you never were in that frame of mind when you were in your 20s.
Oh my goodness.
Or even 30s. Like, where are you at now? What are the simple things that, like, just give us some perspective as to how rooted you can get and how joyful you can get in the simplest of things.
I literally take it down to, I am just thankful for waking up, right? I'm literally thankful for all the people that I'm able to impact, like weird things. I'm actually thankful for all the lessons that I learned, which is, I think, the most grounded thing that I can say is, I look at, for example, my bankruptcy, and it took me 9 years to truly feel this, but I am so grateful for the mistakes because they're all miracles. Like, I believe every setback of mine is a setup, and I'm grateful for the setbacks. When I'm at my best, and this is a really hard thing for people to understand, when things get challenging, I get excited because I truly am grateful that I know something good is coming. I know it's counterintuitive. Like, when other people are like, oh my gosh, there's a lawsuit and this is happening and the sky is falling. I'm literally at my best now that I put myself in a place, I'm like, thank you. Thank you, because I'm going to learn and grow. Like, I know that this is what makes me me. This causes expansion, acceleration, and growth. This is what makes a butterfly fly. If you cut open a cocoon, you kill the butterfly because its wings aren't strong enough. It needs that. And I don't know how I got there through gratitude, but I have gotten to, the majority of the time, things do not faze me. Where the embarrassing part for me is, I'm still a reactionary human being. So although the big grand problems, I'm super awesome at doing that because it's so big. My embarrassment is, my daughter calls and I'm trying to get everything done and whatever, and I end up texting her, please don't text me, I don't have time for this. Right, which reminds me of my favorite Deepak Chopra story. I met his daughter and I was like, oh my God, must be the best thing ever to have Deepak as your dad.
Yeah,
like imagine having a problem and going into the study and
you
be
just
like,
float
Dad!
all day?
Right, exactly. And she's like, what world do you live in, David? I'm like, Deepak's your dad. She goes, let me tell you, I was bawling, crying. I needed his help. And he's in there writing a book and he looks up at me. I'm crying, David. And I go, Dad, I need your help. I need your advice. He goes, stop bothering me. I'm writing a book. Go see your mother. And I'm like, okay, good. Deepak Chopra is the same as me.
He's human.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of this because there have been lots of transition, especially in the last, few years, where I had to figure out like why and how I felt about it. And basically, let me cut to the chase. The only way to the other side is through. And there is never growth without pain, period. So the more pain you go through, be ready, get excited, just like you said, because you're about to break through. You're about to have a growth spurt that is very difficult, but you're going to have to go through the pain first, right? You can't create a new pattern without meeting the resistance, right? Period. You can't you can't have a new thought pattern without training yourself. You can't grow a muscle without straining it. Like there's no growth without pain.
Right. That's why I keep saying, right? Lessons will keep on coming. The only way we know we're still learning the same lesson is if there's pain. When the pain's gone, you've learned that lesson. When the pain's gone, you've learned that lesson.
There you go.
For me, and I think those people that have the ability to take that pain and somehow turn it into that positive joy. And you see it mostly in sports, right? And that's where I learned it, that I just have a higher pain threshold. I had a great kid on my podcast who has one of the highest pain thresholds I've ever seen. He was a BMX champion, then he went into fitness. And his first fitness, he won, and I think he set a world record on day one of his fitness, but he actually passed out and almost died. Imagine pushing yourself that hard. But he had such a pain. He wanted to be a SEAL or something. But he's an extraordinary human being. So I know that Joe DeSenza, who Spartan races, he's the one that has a pain camp, a threshold camp, because with the youth today, he feels like they don't have enough growth potential because everything's so easy, right? Everything's given to them so easy that they haven't experienced the pain. So in their mind, so he actually helps them. He says that downhill skiers have the highest pain threshold. They do the best in the Spartan races because it's cold, right? It's hard. There's low levels of oxygen, which makes it hard to recover too. But it has the highest threshold of pain, that sport, and they do really well in the Spartan races. So it's really interesting. And as you become older and maybe even parent yourself, that's the hardest thing. Is how can you allow your child to experience pain, knowing that I can do it for myself, but my hardest thing is to watch them do it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Of course, you don't want them to have it.
Yeah, which is cool because I think the God relationship, right? God relationship to me, whenever I get lost in that, I think to myself, how would I feel about my son or my daughter? Do you think God wants us to be in pain? No,
Right?
He doesn't.
We're going all the way to the top. We all have to deal with it.
He wants exactly what we want for our child.
Yeah.
Everything. He wants ask any parent, even the ones that are disassociated with, they want everything for their child. That's where my confidence lies in this whole manifestation of faith, is what if I put faith into a higher source that wants everything for me, that I can really believe that and feel it and do it and work because if you have full faith, it's not work. I don't believe in work. I believe in activity you get paid for.
Right,
and
I
activity
agree.
you don't get paid for.
Yeah.
And people that create resistance by saying this is work, I feel sorry for.
Yeah, and we do live in a society where there's so much of that, but I feel like it's because let's say the school system, right? You go to college, you have debt, then you have to pay it off. You get locked into your job. You can't even take a chance to not get paid for a while because you have to eat. You have to have somewhere to sleep. It puts you into this horrible cycle that you can't break free from. So we judge those who don't. We judge those who are like free spirits and travel, but they don't have debt. They're learning, they're growing, and they're doing something that they truly love. And I believe that you can make a job out of absolutely anything. I 100% believe that, no matter how remedial, how silly it is. Look at that one kid on YouTube who gets billions of views to review toys.
Yeah.
he reviews toys. So I think that it's fast, and I mean, I think that's like, I just think that that's a core value, is that you just have to find what you love. There's also, I want to talk about the 4 core principles that you have, because I think that they're important, because I think that, you know, please tell us how they drive your everyday life and your decisions that you make, and maybe some stories you have about how you came to the conclusion of like how one of these made the list, because there's only 4.
Yeah.
And we'll start with gratitude.
Gratitude's my first one. That's what I took. These are the 4 things I wrote down when my wife told me to take stock in who I am.
Wow.
So the first thing I thought about and how I came to it was I needed to change my perspective. I'd always grown up being grateful. My mom, one thing she made us do was
That's a
pray.
good thing. What do you mean you have to change your perspective?
No, because I stopped doing it.
Oh.
Yeah, I took a different perspective, and I started thinking I have to do everything. And my mom, you know, when she programmed us, right, before we went to bed, we had to say thank you for everything we had.
Good.
Not what we didn't have, right? And I was just a little kid, and then if we went downstairs in the morning and we weren't in a grateful attitude, she'd literally make us go back up to the bedroom and come back and start over, right? Because she wanted
Get
to
it
create
right.
a mindset to
Correct.
get it right. So gratitude to me was very simple. I needed to look at everything as I get to do it, which made everything that happened in my past good, everything in my present better, and everything in my future brighter. Simple perspective. And I needed the mindset that I was going to be grateful for everything that came to me. I was going to make sure I appreciated it. What does appreciation mean? It means add value to it. So that was a really important part, and I figured it was the most powerful truth that I could live by, and I just was going to be grateful for my wife, right? I was going to treat her, you know, it's so funny when you're in an intimate relationship. I used to think and joke, but I would say things that aren't nice about my wife to my friends, right? We all know the words that husbands say, and when I'd come home, that's what I would get. I now have an exalted queen, the beautiful, unbelievable woman. That's literally what I get. Right, I choke up. I didn't think I cried about my wife, but I literally changed. I thought it's joke. You might know Teddy Mellencamp and Edwin. They're good friends. He's on their Housewives, but they've been married about 10 years. And I watched them at dinner. I'm like, these guys are just like me. You know, they're bickering. And Teddy said something to my wife. She goes, "How often do you and Dave argue?" She goes, "I probably had 2 arguments in the last 10 years with him." And she's like, "Oh my God, I wonder what marriage like that." She goes, "Oh, let's talk about the first 10 years. 2 arguments a day." Right? Because I started changing with a gracious attitude. I started putting faith in what I wanted from people, finding that light. You're going to get more of what you want.
I need to write that down.
All of you.
Seriously. No,
It's the
you're right.
best.
Focus on what you want, not what you don't want.
And out of people, find that light. And so then it came to the next thing that I wanted. I wanted peace in my life. So I wanted to be happy with perspective. So that was all that was, gratitude. I could be grateful for everything and everyone, but peace was powerful. And I thought of first being sympathetic. That was the first thought that came to my mind. I'm like, man, if I could walk a mile in everyone's shoes, then I would be able to figure this out. And then I started thinking, you know what? I cannot be sad enough for someone to make them happy. I can't be sick enough to make them well, and I definitely can't be poor enough to make them rich. But what I can do is forgive myself. And I knew one thing, that I could only give what I could. I only give what I had, and forgiveness was so powerful. And I had so much baggage that I had to learn to forgive myself, or else my relationship with my wife, my family, everyone wasn't going to work unless I forgive myself.
It will always come out. The projections will come and come and come, and the lessons will keep showing up for you to learn that you first have to forgive yourself. You first have to say to yourself, you are not who you were then. You made a mistake. You have grown. You didn't know any better, or
or you know better and you did it.
I'm sorry for being so hard on myself.
Yeah, I knew better and I still did it. Look, and what I've learned about that forgiveness was it allowed me to illuminate. And it made other people really love me.
Yeah.
They weren't, people say all the time, "I love how vulnerable you are, Dave." And I'm like, because if you're vulnerable, you're invulnerable. I've taken all the steam out of it.
It's true, totally. You give it all up front. There's nothing anybody can say.
Yeah, what are you gonna say? I give it no energy, and you know what?
Yeah.
And it won't bother me because I forgave myself.
Yeah.
And it's not saying, it doesn't give me permission to do wrong things.
Right.
Right, but I can't stumble over the roadblocks behind me. And it just makes, actually, I know it's counterintuitive, it actually secures the fact that I won't do. Because I've forgiven myself, for whatever reason, energetically, I won't do the same mistake again. It's so weird to think about. Where
You take the power away from
people
it.
who don't forgive themselves end up making the same mistakes again and again,
True.
just like you said. It's so counterintuitive. So gratitude, empathy, forgiveness. Then came the powerful one that came from my mom, is I was a really accountable person.
Okay.
My mom would always tell me, you're living below the line, and blame, shame, and justification. Because I was a bullshitter, manipulator, overseller, back-end seller, and a liar, I could come up with all kinds of excuses.
Good salesman.
Right. And instead, my mom would hold me accountable. I want you to tell me, Dave, I did this. Ask yourself 2 questions. What did I do to attract this to myself? And what am I supposed to learn from it? Right? Invoking the miracle to mistakes to miracles lessons.
Yeah.
And that second one, the interesting thing is I go to law school and I get really confused. So I come home with all these challenges to that philosophy. What if someone hits me from behind at a stop sign? And literally my mom had to teach me that's liability. And I teach other people this.
Oh,
people are still, liability is different. That has to do with laws, right?
Right.
You can be liable, but if someone shall cancel, hit me from behind, cancel. If somebody would hit me, I would immediately still call my insurance company and I'd hold them liable.
Sure.
But I would go home and ask myself, what did I do to attract this person? What lessons am I supposed to learn? Am I supposed to be more right? There's all these lessons I could learn from an incident that is causing me pain, because I know it's a lesson in there. And that's a true power. So, gratitude gives you happiness and perspective. Forgiveness gives you peace. Accountability is counterintuitive in the fact that it gives you control of your life. By surrendering and understanding, I've attracted this to myself, what am I supposed to learn from it? I actually have complete control of my life. Because I know that I have the power to attract whatever I want. I have the power to attract whatever I want, even unconsciously. And if it comes that way, I have to learn from it. That way I get something from it.
Yeah.
And then the last lesson is inspiration.
Yeah.
So I needed to live an inspired life. And what happened was I only thought that inspiration happened this way by me selling people. Like I thought, like selling
You
them
putting
ideas.
something out.
Yeah. Like me inspiring
Oh,
you.
wow. That's
Like,
funny
that was
because
it.
I would think inspiration's like somebody has to show me something so cool that I think I want to do that.
Isn't that funny?
Okay,
but for
wow.
me, I think it was the manipulator. Like I felt that was my power, that I could, inspire other people,
Okay.
But the problem was I was missing what you were talking about. I literally had no connection to that which inspired me.
Right.
It was all in a shallow vessel that once I learned that everything came through me, I immediately went this way, which caused me to go back to center, which caused me to meditate, and things and coincidences. I'm a math person. These coincidences just started happening. The most significant thing that took me on my journey of spirituality was I started on my list.
Yeah.
I saw the movie The Secret.
Yeah.
I poo-pooed it, which means I didn't believe anything. My wife's like, you are the most resistant guy. And I'm like, you can't sit in a chair and get a Ferrari. It took a lot of work, but in my 20s, I had a Ferrari. I loved my Ferrari. And then I learned to hate my Ferrari for various reasons because it wasn't what I thought it would be. But literally,
Doesn't have a cup holder. I mean, what the hell?
Wasn't going to know. Literally, I think revealed my anatomy to all the girls I was dating. That's really the thing that pissed me off. I just had to get older and wiser to figure that out. But literally, I felt uninspired about everything. And if I learned to connect to that which inspired me, my life would change and allow it to come through me for others. And those 4 things.
What did you find inspired you then?
My potential, like truly the truth. And I went on an airplane and this woman next to me looked at me and she said, you're so full of light. And at that time, literally just started this quantum shift. I still had a lot of ego and a lot of arrogance. I was working for Leigh Steinberg. I was running the most notable sports agency in the world. My friends were the most famous people. I still was rich. And I looked at her and I said, thank you. And she said, do you meditate? And I literally went into a diatribe.
And how long ago was this?
This is like the 2 years before I went bankrupt. So I was
this is
30.
a long...
Yeah, I was 37.
I'm so excited somebody's talking about meditating back then.
Yeah, and her name was Dr. Sangeeta Sahi, a medical doctor, who's later I found out a healer.
Oh.
But anyway, she looked at me and said, you meditate? I went into this diatribe. I'll try to say it exactly, but I looked at her and I said, meditation. I don't have time to meditate. People are high, sick, and broke on their mom's couch. Meditate. I grew up.
Oh, got it. Those are your words, not someone else's.
I'm
As
telling
you were
her.
describing them earlier, you're like, there are people that are high, sick, and broke. No, those are your words.
Exactly. I'm telling her straight out. Literally. how could I meditate? I made everything myself. I literally listed out what I had. I
Oh,
said I have
wow.
a Ferrari, a Porsche.
She's like, he needs to work on his narcissism.
Oh, yeah. I listed out like the Ferrari, the Porsche, the houses, the ski mountain, golf course. I run Leigh Steinberg. Have you heard of Leigh Steinberg? Ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire? Like, this is where my ego was still. And she looked at me and she said, oh, that's too bad. She goes, because I could teach you to vibrate faster. And I'm looking at her like, what?
What?
She's like, yeah. She goes,
You're like, I'm married. That's inappropriate.
right, exactly. I'm thinking close to that. I'm literally like, this is me a long flight to India. She goes, the earth vibrates the slowest, then plants, animals, humans, then sound, then light, then thought. She goes, do you know what vibrates the fastest? And I was literally still arrogant. I'm like, no. She goes, the truth. And literally the hairs on my arm stood up. She goes, the truth vibrates the fastest. You cannot be aware of anything that vibrates, right? Just lower than you.
Yeah.
I can elevate your vibration so you can be aware of the truth. Don't you want to know the truth? I could teach you whether to buy or sell. That's an awareness.
Yeah.
And she invited me to a workshop.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know why.
Did you take the call? I mean, like, did you go?
I did. Wow. And my wife had such skepticism because I was so lost. I told her I'm staying in India an extra few days to go to this workshop. I met this Dr. Sangeeta Sai. She thought I was going to a Little John concert, right? Like literally, I was lying again and this was going to be the end of my relationship. She had to Google the woman to figure out she was truly a theta meditation expert, a quantum healer, a medical doctor.
Wow.
And I went through all these things, like including body scans, past life
attracted her. Sitting next to you.
Without a doubt. And in fact, I still am a healer myself. I did my first body scan and I remember it to a T where, someone gives you your hands and you scan their body for energy. And I'm not a believer at this time, but I'm already getting to feel like, wow, I'm pretty connected. Like this is really true. And the woman that I was doing with, I literally see all this red in her stomach. And then on her right big toe, it's like a huge energy burst. And so, Dr. Saw, he's like, what do you see, David? I'm like, well, I see, red in her stomach and I see on her big right toe, like this energy just swirling. And I open my eyes because I could feel the lady go like this.
Yeah.
She goes, oh yeah, I'm having really bad stomach issue. I've been to the doctor on my medication and I stubbed my toe this morning and lost my nail on that big toe.
Wow.
And I'm literally like, did I just do this? Like, where's the
this
scam?
is
I'm looking
also-
for the scam.
Right, but this is also a way that, I've found, whether it's myself or the people around me that are maybe mediums or something like that, like you do little tests on people around you and then it develops the talent and, further to trust it more so that you can really start to use it.
Law of surrender, right?
Yeah.
And start being aware of the power that we have. We're connected to the greatest source of energy ever, and we can elevate our existence. And that set me on my way with those 4 values. Now, just real quickly, because I've added 3 things that have changed my life as I've evolved, because it's been 12 years.
Yeah.
The number one thing beyond those values is, I think, we have this happiness problem because people aren't humble enough to ask. Like, if I would encourage anyone to change their life, I would teach this one question: do you know anyone that can help me? Like literally, on average, most people know 1,000 people. If we're asking every day just one person, we're increasing our chances of getting help and to expand 30,000 people.
Yeah.
If
Brene Brown talks about this a lot, about when you ask for someone for help, then you're creating a connection. There's a trust there. That's a connection point for sure.
And so I'm a huge fan, and I still fight it. There's several situations that I don't ask. I know we even talked about the podcast. Hey, haven't asked when someone comes in for you. I was with the CTO of Uber and we had this great discussion and I walked away kicking myself going, how did I not ask for help? That guy had tons of stuff he could have helped me with and I didn't ask for help. This other 2 things, one revolves around time. I think we have an infinity of time. People don't know how to utilize time. So I always encourage people, and I do this, I'm a student of my calendar. I study it with the lens of productivity and accessibility. Okay. I want to provide as much value during the day as I can. I want to be accessible to as many people and access what I want. And I think that people, if we get really disciplined about being a student of our calendar, that we can understand and take advantage of time. Number 1 piece of advice that I have for people is study the time that you sleep. We sleep 8 hours.
Also, family, incorporate that part too, because that's something people always have to think about.
Yeah, so family for me, so I lower the bar always. I believe in consistent behavior. So family was interesting because I had to shift a different way than you would think. Family was my priority, then work. I had to put my health first. So I do a minimum now, and you can go back to our elevator pitch days, what I look like then, but I spend a minimum of an hour a day on my health. So I will leave my son, my daughters, my wife.
Yeah.
Every single day, I don't miss a day, an hour a day minimum of my health.
Yep.
Then my family, and I even use the same prescription with my family. And my relationships have never been better. My wife gets 30 minutes minimum a day, undivided attention. Not always whole, could be 10, 10, and 10, but I don't go a day without spending a minimum of 30 minutes a day with my wife. 9-year-old son, minimum 30 minutes a day. 3 teenage daughters, minimum of 2 minutes a day.
You're very intentional.
Yeah, very. But my relationships, and the best one has been my mom. I give her a minimum of 1 minute a day, and I have something that I want to make sure she knows. By asking her what makes you happy, she wants me to be happy. And I said, what can I do to make you happy, be happy, and let me just know that you love and appreciate me.
That's it. That only takes the minute every day.
Only takes a minute, and I do it every single day. I talk about it almost on every video.
Wow.
So sometimes if I can't talk to her, I literally send her that part of the video. I just have my guys edit it. And I'm all, hey, I'm thinking of you. Text her the link. Hey, I'm thinking of you, Mom. And she's like, oh my God, you were with Danica Patrick, and you told her that you love and appreciate, right?
Yeah.
Way better than me
That's good.
actually
We need to send this to her.
Exactly, we
and
will.
What's your mom's name?
Karen.
Karen, for being such a shining example. And it'd be interesting to also know how she got to the point where she could be so positive so much of the time. So maybe that should be her return video to us. It's
right.
like, how did you stay so positive? Because it obviously affected you in a huge way.
And my siblings as well. And so, I think that's an important, but I talk about sleep because 8 hours a day most people spend on their subconscious and unconscious without improving it. And that to me is a much more powerful source. And so,
is there anything you do in particular? But we know what you do when you wake up. But what about before bed?
Well, first of all, the bed is for sleeping.
Right.
Right. So I made a mistake
stuff.
and lost.
Yeah.
I studied. Yeah, I studied in bed, which was a huge mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Don't work in bed.
Yeah.
64 degrees is actually the optimal.
Yeah, I
temperature.
heard 65, but definitely much colder than people normally keep.
If you're going to buy a mentor in anything, before even you have a business coach, and I am a business coach, I'm working against myself. Have a sleep coach. Literally, because if you have alternative routines, I call my sleep coach and say, hey, I'm going to Hong Kong for 36 hours. Here's when I land.
Oh, wow.
Should I pay for a bed?
Right.
And if not, should I pay for a bed when I land?
Should I sleep right away? Should I stay up?
When should I eat's a really big deal.
When should you work out again?
Also open up the shades.
Yeah.
So like darkness and light. So there's a lot that they can help you with.
Oh,
with
sure.
Light. Even for like firmness of pillow snoring's another thing that I've been tested for. Just all types of different things. But I want to be productive and accessible.
Well, there's plenty of evidence that shows that sleep is where you also are able to stay healthy from like illnesses, right? So whether it's the cold or anything like that,
never
like
get sick. I know people don't like me to tell you that.
Stay well just from
I'm like
sleep.
a cockroach. I'm a carrier, I guess, but I don't get sick, and it drives my employees crazy because I'm very
because you get a ton of shit done.
Yeah, and I'm always there.
And
they feel guilty.
you're never sick. And
they always have the Irish flu on like a Friday after a big party.
Right, that's different though.
I know.
That's different.
But it's so interesting because sleep has changed my life. It
Yeah.
really has, and I really encourage people to study it. And then study other things that you're doing. The last thing applies right to that, which I had this real confusion about being present. Mm-hmm. And people would always say, oh, be present. And like I never really had to answer what that was.
Did you even know what that meant back then?
I thought
did you really have a thought to it?
I thought I just knew it. So like, why would I give it thought? Then people started asking me, what does it mean? And I was like, I don't really know. And I started thinking like Kung Fu Panda, today's the gift. The turtle's telling the panda, because that's why we call it the present. I'm like, what does that mean? What I realized it mean to me was a really pragmatic thing. And I tell people all the time, you have to do things now. If you ask yourself, no matter what it is, can I do this now? You save at least twice as much time by doing something now, and you're exponentially more successful.
High five. I agree. Like when someone asks for something or somebody, I'm like, let's just do it right now.
Yeah.
Whether it's like somebody wants a picture and I'm like, let's just do it right now. Somebody needs me to call, let's just do it right now. Because more than anything, it's because I'll forget. But also it's just done. It's just like, and that sits on your conscience and you're like, you kind of remember and then you feel guilty and then you really feel guilty when you forget.
Yeah. And then I have an added thing. I have a do it now folder. So if I can't do
Yeah.
something now, I put it, I either text it to myself or email folder. Then what happens is when I'm a student in my calendar, I put a portion of the day to go through my do it now folder, and I prioritize by what's important. So many people confuse urgency with important. If something's just urgent but not important, like, hey, your wife needs milk, or I need my laundry by tomorrow because I'm speaking and I need that suit, that is urgent.
Yeah.
Not very important. So you delegate anything that's urgent and not important. So I literally go through and delegate because I just email it to the person that I'm delegating it to. And what happens is, one that, as a salesperson, that killed me is, you know, the guy that says, really big deal, call me on this date. It could be 3 weeks. And you put it in your calendar and it's always in there. Oh, Monday starts and it's on Thursday. Like, oh my God, I'm going to close that deal. I've been working on it. I've been waiting 3 weeks. Somehow, and I've done this several times, by Thursday, you forget to call the guy. Like that thing, like the most important thing, I've done it and I'm like, how did I forget to do that? You literally, you're at the end of the day going, how did, because I was stuck in not doing it now, not being important and urgent, not having a codified list to knock things out.
Write things down. Huge helper. So maybe you could, I think it would be really, really helpful if you could maybe give everyone some direction as to what they could do to set themselves on a higher vibrational path for their life. And now it's for their life, right? Because I'm sure that when your business got better, personal helps, but like it's all in the same, it's all happening at the same time. So, you know, maybe there's something you can give some advice on.
I think awareness wise, you know, I'm on a happiness crusade. I read a report that the average American's happy 15 days a year.
That's shit.
Number one cause of death for people under 50 is suicide. So
Wow.
I've been studying it. It really means a lot to me, but because I think that people just have to have one mindset. What if every person you saw, everything that you did, statistically you got better at doing one thing, asking yourself, how can I be kind to my future self? So it's really silly, but I'll walk in somewhere and I'll say, oh, this person, how can I be kind to my future self? What is it I could do? I used to pass people on the street. That's not kind to my future self. Just take a minute.
Right.
You know, go ahead.
What if you see them again?
Exactly. Whatever.
If you need them.
Piece of trash, I pick it up. Every single thing I do is on a goal or a potential of being kind to my future self. And in actuality, it's a very selfish thing when you think about the words, I'm being kind to my future self. But in order to do that, I'm actually just doing good deeds.
Right. What if they need you and you are the one that can make something happen for them?
Exactly. And you can actually teach other people. My crusade is, I really wanted to figure out how to make $100 billion like Bezos, and I've challenged myself economically to figure out the math of it, and I haven't been able to do it. But the one thing I have mathematically figured out, and I have the platform to do it, is what if I could find 1,000 people like a Danica Patrick who could empower 1,000 people to empower 1,000 people?
Yeah.
That would be 1,000 times 1,000 is a million times 1,000 is a billion. And if I could teach these things that we're talking about just to empower them to be happy, what if 1 billion people on Earth were happy 365 days a year? Not every moment.
The entire Earth would change.
One particle of light overcomes millions of darkness. There would, so many diseases would leave. It would be an extraordinary place. And
we'd stop fighting.
I actually believe, maybe I'm crazy, but like as crazy as anything I've ever thought, I have the math of it, and I really believe I have the power of the relationships, the platform, to find 1,000 Danica Patricks that really believe in this. And it's only 2 levels down, right? If I can find 1,000 of you, all I need to do, 1,000 times 1,000 is a million. All I need to do is teach you to teach 1,000, and then the other 1,000, and we get to 1 billion people. And the math is so easy in my mind. I'm like, I can actually do that. And I'm not in a hurry. What if it's only 20 people a year, right? It'll take me 50 years. You know, I got to live to 101 to do that, but I think I can do more than that in a year because of the platform that we have.
For sure.
That's where my mindset is, being kind to my future self, teaching people to be kind to their future self, trying to statistically get better every day of just being kind and creating positive energy.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, but it's really simple.
The one thing I always think is, you know, because I mean, like I fall into the trap of judging or of course, and or being angry about something, whether that's the way they drive on the road or so how slow they respond to me or something. Yeah, sure. But honestly, I mean, when you start to meet enough people from enough countries and enough situations, you realize that everybody's really doing the best they can for the most part. I mean, there's some evil souls, but there are not that many of those. Most people are doing the best they can from their level of consciousness, and to have patience with that.
Yeah.
And I still would like to teach them all how to drive, but yep.
Well, coming from the greatest driver.
Oh, well, nice. One of them, hopefully. But thank you so much. I think that's very inspirational, and I think you've overachieved today on your 1,000.
Oh, you're amazing.
When this comes out and people listen to it, this will be very powerful, as it's powerful for me just sitting here. So
this is the pinch myself week, just being here with you and all the other things I've gotten to do with the launch of my book and TV shows that I'm doing, but this is the
It really all started with you. It started with meeting you at Elevator Pitch, and you being a passionate person, and you being so kind, and sitting and doing your podcast that day, and they're yelling at us to stop after almost 30 minutes, and I'm like, shut up, go away, we're having so much fun.
Yeah, you're awesome.
So thank you.
Intense.
Oh yeah.
Successful podcast.
Well, that's my mission would be to get people to go deeper, right? You got to try, because there's no, to grow you have to go through that pain. So sometimes it's not necessarily gonna be physically painful, but maybe emotionally, or maybe a pain in the ass. Nice. But it's part of the growth. And so thank you for being part of that.
You're awesome.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.